We're almost there, people. The chase for Lord Stanley's mug is about to hit the ultimate, and we're at the Eastern Conference semifinal preview. Carolina Hurricanes, Florida Panthers. Steele and I have X factors, bets, odds, and a lot of the angles that you're going to want to cover headed into this series. Thank you for joining us for Thursday's episode. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back inside the lab, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And thank you for making us your first listen. We are part of the Locked On Fantasy Network, and of course, you're making us your first listen every single day. It is your team every day. And on today's episode, Steele, honestly, previews of this magnitude are always exciting, and we are now down to the top 4 teams in the NHL. It's an interesting mix. You and I can agree on that. But this Eastern Conference final, maybe it doesn't have all the trimmings of the Western Conference. I think we're both a little bit more fired up for that one, which we will have a full preview for on tomorrow's episode. But we still got to get into business here, and the Carolina Hurricanes are built and looking primed for a cup. We're going to talk about that, X factors, who needs to step up. We're going to also talk about exactly who wins and in how many games. And of course, we got bets for game 1, baby, Thursday night. I got 3. I'm sure Steele has at least a couple. So we're going to get to all of it. But why don't we start right off the top, Steele? Clearing away, Carolina, in my opinion, should be the favorites. But I wanted to say this: when you look at the Vegas odds, Carolina to win the series at minus 145, the Florida Panthers at plus 120 are getting a lot of respect from Vegas. And I guess they've earned it, haven't they?
Yeah, they have earned it, especially after what they did in the first round against the best team that has ever played in the NHL with that type of record, coming back from down 3-1 to win in Game 7 on the road against the Boston Bruins. They've been one of the best road teams this season in the postseason, and then what they accomplished over the Toronto Maple Leafs, winning in 5 games, 3 of them on the road. So just great respect from a lot of fans out there, especially the Vegas odd makers on the Florida Panthers for what they've done this postseason. And they deserve it, rightfully so.
They really do, Steele. And I think this is what we're going to get to some of the key points of this series. And I just think I needed to get off the jump before people start to throw too much disrespect on this Florida team's name. And when you're in the Eastern or any conference final, regardless of the side of the NHL you're on, you need that respect on your name, and they have gone through not the easy way. So a lot of really good fantasy pieces. We've talked about that, but I think there's some critical areas where this Florida Panthers team is going to have to excel, because on the other side of the coin, before we get too nitty gritty, my goodness, Carolina, even though at length we've talked about down the pieces, down some of that offensive punch, finding a way to just really get it done. And I think one of the things that really impresses me the most, Steele, and hit me with your take on this, is obviously they get it done by committee. That's one of the common threads through all of these teams that are left. They all get it done by committee. But it's that blue line, I think, for me, that really kind of makes me excited. If you're a Carolina Hurricanes bettor, they throw the puck on net from everywhere. And that was one of the things that I think the teams that have bowed out so far didn't do enough of. And this Carolina blue line is really probably the best in the business.
Yeah, and that's what's something I wanted to highlight on today's episode as well, is how great some of the defensemen have been for the Carolina Hurricanes. Brent Burns, Brett Pesce, I'm blanking out on the other name right now. Jakob Slavin as
Brady
well. Shaden Gostisbehere has kind of been a bust so far offensively, but those guys, even Brady Shea, have really stepped up in the postseason.
Brady Shea, sorry. I always say Sky.
So those guys have really lived up. And, for me, on top of that, I think just they have the right guy at the helm right now behind the bench. Rod Brind'Amour is just an absolute genius with his coaching mind. And you look at all 4 head coaches in the Final Four right now, Peter DeBoer, Bruce Cassidy, Paul Maurice, and Rod Brind'Amour, some of the, if not the best coaches in the NHL right now. Good. All of them are phenomenal.
Great point.
So that's, I think at the most definitely at this stage right now in the Western and Eastern Conference Finals, a lot of people did not expect these 4 teams to be in
No.
the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. But I think when you look at the head coaching staff and the head coaches themselves, now you know why they're there. It's not just the players, but the coaching staff, the head coaching from all 4 of those guys has just been phenomenal all postseason long.
Such a good point. And honestly, when you think about these, factors that are standing out, balanced attack, ability to get it done at all times on the ice, 5-on-5, penalty kill, power play. It's just this is what it takes now to win a Stanley Cup. This is a battle. Look at all the good teams that have already been left on the cutting room floor. That might be the most, the biggest obvious example of how hard it is to now win a cup. And I think that's what I'm trying to take away from exactly your point, which is, accurate, is we did not expect these 4 teams to be in the mix. And I think that just might be perhaps more indicative of how good and well they are coached. Great point on your behalf. Let's head into some of these X factors, Steele. Before we get to break, we're going to talk about, I think one of the angles that I wanted to talk about is some of these pieces that may be laying in the wings. And I know that's going to be hard to do because of how well these teams have performed. But I think there's a couple of pieces on each team here that can be a little bit better and not be an X factor, but just be the difference. So let's talk about the X factors, though, Steele, because I want to throw it back over to you. Who are you looking at to make that difference aside from guys who need to be better?
Yeah, I want to start with the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm going a little bit off script with this player, but I think Jesper Kotkaniemi has to be an X factor in this series against the Florida Panthers. I still think there's a lot in his game that he needs to do in order to develop and be and play on a consistent level. But I have been very impressed with his game so far this postseason. 6 points in 11 games. For 22 years old, he's a very physical guy. In the regular season, he had over 110 hits. In the postseason so far, 15 hits, 6 blocks. So he's putting his body on the line. I think where his game starts to look a little sloppy is his stick handling ability. A ton of giveaways in the neutral zone and even in the offensive zone. So that's where I'm saying he needs to kind of work on his game. But again, been very impressed with what I've seen so far. 5 of those 6 points came in that series against the New Jersey Devils. So he really stepped up big time in the second round. And I expect a little bit more of him and again, more consistent level against the Florida Panthers because Sergei Bobrovsky has been almost unbeatable since coming in for Alex Lyon right now. And if the Hurricanes are going to want to dominate, they're going to need some depth scoring. It can't just be Sebastian Aho or Brent Burns or Martin Necas. Teuvo Teravainen looks like he is ready to rejoin the Hurricanes as well. So they need a little bit more. They need a little bit more of their depth scoring. So that second line now, where Kotkaniemi is the second line center, and he's centering Jordan Martinook and Jesper Fast, who were all great in that second round series. I think the second line, but also Jesper Kotkaniemi, now that he's solidified, or not solidified, but he's in the top 6 group, he needs to start taking some more looks on net, putting pucks on net like he did in that second round.
He could definitely be an X factor, and I like that you're highlighting him. 18 shots so far this postseason. I think he actually has done a good job so far, and I think what you're trying to say, or what you are saying, is they need to continue that depth scoring. They've already brought themselves here because I think we were both very clear. We knew that with those injuries, offense was going to be an issue. So good defensively. They've gotten great goaltending all year, aside even from Kochetkov, who came in at times and did look shaky. He was great for the other stretches. Ranta, of course, and now Freddie. This is going to be a tough team to beat, Steele. Right after the break, I want to talk about, though, 1 or 2 more X factors, who needs to step up, and our predictions for the series and in how many games. Of course, we've got Thursday night bets for game 1 ready to roll, baby. But today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Bird Dog. And Steele and I just got this package of treats. Awesome shorts, comfortable fit, and they're swaggy with the colors. It looks even better, but it feels amazing. There are shorts with pants for the golf course, a meeting, a date night, hanging out with friends. You need to check out Bird Dogs and this new line of clothing. You know the personal stories with this stuff. Steele is hilarious. Bert Kreischer wakes up at his lake house wearing bird dogs, goes for a swim, smokes a cigar, grills some burgers, and chills with his family, all in the shorts that he wears with all summer. That's bird dogs. Even Dave Portnoy does pizza reviews wearing bird dogs and talks about how he hates the pizza, but his legs look great in these shorts. I won't lie, Steele. These legs are looking pretty good in them too. I can't wait for you to get your package of bird dogs, and I know you're going to be swagging that on the West Coast in Vancouver as well. And even the PFT, pardon my take, hosts, they never wear pants, and the only shorts they wear are from Bird Dogs. Make sure you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter the promo code LockedOnNHL, and they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every single order. That's right. Head over to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure you're copping some fresh shorts for the summer, just like Steele and I, and getting yourself some free Yeti-style tumblers with every single order.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find a Locked On podcast of your favorite team in all 4 major sports leagues and the NCAA. Your team every single day. I still have my Florida Panthers X Factor. Mm-hmm. We are going to get to who needs to be better for each team as well in this Eastern Conference Finals series. But Flip, who is your X Factor for the Carolina Hurricanes?
Yeah, aside from like doing the obvious and saying it's got to be the goaltenders, which I think at this time of year, that's an obvious statement.
Pretty factual.
I really do think that is, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that after the season he had, was it going to be hard for Martin Necas to repeat that level of production? Of course. But I still think he's a good enough player, and who cares about repeating production? Have yourself a really good series and balance out this attack for the Hurricanes. They're going to be hard to stop if that's the case. So for me, I really think he actually might fit the mold for being better as well, because as much as I know he's got 4 goals and 6 points, I think you and I can both agree, given how good we saw him in the regular season, maybe we expected a little bit more. Anyway, if he can get it done, balance that attack out, and they get Teravainen back, Steele, all of a sudden there's a wrinkle to this Carolina offense that maybe is too much for the Florida Panthers to handle in the end, but we'll see when we come to our predictions.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm going with my Florida Panthers X Factor right here, is a guy who can be a difference maker and has been, but he's going to have to continue that type of energy and level against the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's Sam Bennett for me. 8 points in 11 games so far this postseason. I think he was a huge
I got another
maker.
Sam.
Yeah, he was a huge difference maker in the series against the Maple Leafs. Like, he was everywhere on the ice, relentless pressure. He's always finishing his checks in the offensive zone, and he's just great at getting under players' skin. Like, we saw him get Michael Bunting and a few other players frustrated.
It's true.
You know, he can be a little dirty at times. He had 20 penalty minutes in the 5 games against the Maple Leafs. He took out Matthew Nyes for the rest of the series. He had 2 brutal cross checks on Michael Bunting.
Got away with it.
And got away with it.
So
though. That's the type of level and type of game that Sam Bennett plays. Sometimes he gets away with it. Sometimes he doesn't. He finds himself in the box. So at times it can hurt the Florida Panthers, but that level of energy and that physicality that he brings every game can be a difference maker. And we saw that against the Maple Leafs. And he's going to have to do that against the Carolina Hurricanes, because they have some tough players on their team.
It's so true. And this is just such I'm going to cop out and repeat. It needs to be a balanced attack at this time of year, right? Aside from guys being gassed, aside from that toll on the body, aside from all of those things, like, a balanced attack is what gets it done at this time of year. And as mentioned, all of these teams have been bringing it as such. And I think for me, the whole X factor for the Panthers is that third line. Lundell, Luostarinen, and Reinhart. At times, they've looked really, really good together. They play off each other nicely. Reinhart seems to really seize the moment after not playing any playoff hockey throughout the start of his career, toiling away there with the Sabres. Now, all of a sudden, he's got over 20 games under his belt with the Panthers, and he's starting to show that he's just one of these guys that the playoff pressure doesn't bother him at all. Actually, it seems to fire his game right up to another level. So looking at Reinhart, I think that's an obvious X factor for me. And I'm excited to talk about 2 players, one on each team, that I think we're both going to agree need to be better in terms of their team taking this series in, neat and order fashion here, pal.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I guess I'll just start with the two
Throwing it
players
to you.
that I have for the Florida Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Oh,
has
you got 2 and 2.
yeah,
Here we go.
I got two players. I got two players from the Florida Panthers. I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
both of them come from the blue line. It's Brandon Montour and Aarton Ekblad. I think you probably have Aarton Ekblad on your who needs to be
Ekblad,
better
top
as
of the
well.
list.
But I've
Yeah.
got Brandon Montour and Aarton Ekblad. Florida scored 26 goals in the first round against the Bruins, and Ekblad didn't record a single point in that series. Now you look at the second round against Maple Leafs. Florida recorded 14 goals in round 2. Again, they only played 5 games, but Ekblad had 5 points in 5 games. Where Montour only had 1 point in 5 games. So
good points.
Montour had a great first round, but kind of disappeared offensively in the second round. And you and I just got finished talking about how great the Carolina Hurricanes defensemen have been. Brent Burns, Brett Pesce, and Brady Shea as well. You know, Shane Goshenberg could be a difference maker if he can get his game going offensively as well. So I think because of how great Carolina's defense have been at jumping into plays, we know how great they are in the defensive zone and helping out Frederick Anderson. But that's something the Florida Panthers are going to need to do a better job at, getting their defensemen into the plays, because Brandon Montour and Aarton Ekblad, I guess you can throw Gustav Forsling in there as well. Those are their top 3 guys, and they're going to have to jump into the plays and put pucks on net from the blue line.
I actually think the Carolina Hurricanes led the league this year in like goals from their blue line core, something like that. Like 25% of their offense came from the blue line. But right thereafter, it was the Florida Panthers, right? Like, I think it was something over almost 150 points from Montour, Ekblad, or Montour, Forsling, and you know what I'm talking about, Steele. Spit me out another name here. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is the offense from the defense for both of these teams is going to be key. And I think whatever team is able to kind of break through and bring that extra wrinkle of offense, whether it be from the third line for the Panthers, whether it be from the blue line for the Panthers, whether it be those role players we mentioned in the X factors for Carolina or the blue line themselves, someone is going to really have to take the reins early in this series, because I think the last thing the Carolina Hurricanes want to do, and we'll go to break after this, talk about who needs to step up and bets after the break, is the last thing the Hurricanes want to do is let this Florida Panther team gain any more confidence than it already has, because we know the Carolina Hurricanes are built for this time of year, but confidence can be a dangerous thing to play against, Steele. And obviously this Panthers team has that in spades right now.
Yeah, and again, that's something they're going to have to do. And real quickly, before we do go to break, I'll just talk about what needs to be better for the Carolina Hurricanes. And for me, that's their power play, because that's the only thing I could find. 18.9% right now on the power play. They're going to have to take advantage of this Florida penalty kill, because they're at 65.8%. So kind of lopsided right there from the Florida Panthers and Carolina Hurricanes on special teams, because the Florida Panthers power play is rocking right now, 27.6% on the power play. But then you look at the Carolina Hurricanes penalty kill, and they're at 90%. So very lopsided for both the penalty kill and special teams. But I think in order for the Carolina Hurricanes to take away some of that confidence is continuing to get power play opportunities, because we know Sam Bennett, Ratko Gudas, if Ryan Lomberg is back back with the team as well, all those guys, even Sam Reinhart in front of the net, they're going to be taking a lot of penalties. So you got to take advantage of the power play, and you got to boost those numbers up. It can't be below 19 or 20% right now.
Totally agree with you, my friend. That's why I love coming on this show. That's why I love you holding me down as the co-host. Man, I love this time of year. It's the hockey is awesome, even though you and we were talking off air a little bit that you're not as jazzed up for this Final Four as you might have been with other pieces, even though obviously we're biased with some of those other pieces. But honestly, it's not the sexiest of Final Four. But I think we're on tap for some really special hockey, especially in that Western Conference series, which we will tee up tomorrow. We're going to tee up a couple of players that need to be or step up. Steele, I think maybe you hit the nail on the head, though, with how good both these teams have been. I think it's more about just continue to play well, because no one's really been that bad. Like, realistically, we're going to have to nitpick. So let's just continue to talk about those keys to the series and offer up our previews and who wins and in how many games.
It's all about consistency, my friend, and that's exactly what you get from eBay Motors. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is the perfect fit. It's same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop at eBay Motors, and with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only, available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. So make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the follow button, leave us a review as well. Don't be afraid to leave any comments or DM us on our Twitter at LO_FantasyNHL. We appreciate all of the conversations we have with our listeners every single day. Sir. And we are going to get to big time bets. Back to the betting board. Carolina Hurricanes taking on the Florida Panthers for game 1 on Thursday. But Flip, real quick, Carolina Hurricanes, who do you think needs to be better?
This is a tough spot given how, balanced this Carolina Hurricanes team has been. And obviously any team making it to the conference final, including the upstart Florida Panthers team, we're going to have to nitpick with who has to be better, right, Steele? So in my opinion, and when I looked at the numbers for Frederik Andersen, .931 save percentage and a 1.80 goals against. And again, I know Sergei Bobrovsky has stood on his head and been so solid in the postseason for the Florida Panthers. .918 save percentage and a 2.82 goals against. I think Bob's going to have to be even better if this team wants to really, really be considered a Stanley Cup finalist. I don't think that's a bold take either, Steele. Frederik Andersen has proved over the last 5 games that he's feeling it right now on another level. Bob, not trying to take away from it at all, but I think you and I can both agree with, if you're taking 2 hot hands right now, I know I'm going to ride with Freddie Andersen in that tighter blue line in Carolina. So in my opinion, for Florida, Bob is going to have to take his game, which I know is crazy given those numbers. I really do think he's going to have to take his game to a whole other level.
I'm with you right there with that statement as well. Sergei Bobrovsky is going to have to be better than what we saw.
He's got to carry his team a little bit, right?
He really does. Matthew Tkachuk and Bark over there on the offensive side of things. So if he can get the job done in the defensive zone, then they have a good chance. But that brings me to my first pick and my first bet in game 1 is I'm going with the Hurricanes and Panthers under 6.5. I think Bobrovsky and both Frederik Andersen are going to show up. We know what the defensive group for the Carolina Hurricanes bring to the table, and we know that they can have some low scoring games. And that's I'm going with the goalie battle for game 1. So Hurricanes Panthers under 6.5.
I teased it up to 6.5 as well. I'm seeing a lot of numbers out there at 5.5, but you know how I love that little extra cushion, especially if you're taking it under, which are always a bit of a roller coaster ride if you have them in a parlay, especially. Overs never die. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, under 6.5, tease that bad boy up. I got it at 170 Steele. I believe our friends at FanDuel have it at 170. I'm feeling it as well. And just to tie it back into that discussion of who needs to be better, I mentioned who I think needs to be better for the Florida Panthers. And again, when you look at this Hurricanes lineup, it's really hard to pick. I leaned on Necas a little bit. I think some of those blue liners down that bottom, Shane Gostisbehere, they paid a good price to get Gostisbehere in here. And I know it wasn't like a be-all or end-all deal, and it's a nice additional piece. But I think he needs to be better, Steele. And I think his game, like given how he was brought in, right, to bring that offensive addition to a team that's already so committed defensively, so he can go out there and do his thing. So I'd like to see him go out there and do his thing. We know he can bring that power play love, that, the distributing the puck around. So in my opinion, he needs to be better. That's not tied to any of my bets. But before I throw it back to you, I'll hit you with my second bet. I'm loving the Brent Burns anytime assists. He has 6 assists so far through this postseason. He's got 41 shots on net. I know that leads defensemen. And I think he's going to get at least 1 assist in this game, Steele, even though it is an under.
Yeah, I stayed away from 3 picks in this game, and I stayed away from player props. I just wanted to go with some
Fair.
easy picks
Fair.
here to
I
start the
respect that.
Eastern Conference Finals. So again, first pick was the Hurricanes Panthers under 6.5, and I'm going with the easy pick again. Hurricanes on the money line. The Panthers have been a
Have
great
to.
road team, but the Hurricanes have just been an even better home team. So I'm going with the hot hand at home here. Hurricanes on the money line. That is technically my lock of the night.
It's my lock of the night too, pal. Minus 144 right now on the money line for Carolina. And I kind of wanted to buy into that narrative of, oh, yeah, of course Carolina's favored game one. You know what I'm saying? And like
Yeah.
go with Florida. And then I kind of, the hockey sense kind of rained back in on me for 1 second. I'm not saying the Florida Panthers don't have a shot to win this series, because
Yeah.
obviously they do. And like we said off the very top, we're not trying to poo-poo on anything they've done, and they've earned that respect. But, just the makeup and the matchup and how this team gets it done. I know we've probably said that about the Bruins and the Leafs as well, and then they both got dealt with. Anyway, Hurricanes money line minus 144. That's my lock of the night. And I am really excited to talk about Dallas Stars and Vegas Golden Knights on tomorrow's episode, Steve.
That will be the entire episode for Friday. Game 1 of the Vegas Golden Knights Dallas Stars Western Conference Finals. You don't want to miss out on all the content and breakdown that Flip and I have got going for Friday's episode. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes Eastern time. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.